Hey, TooneySA here with the first video in a series that will have episodes appear every now and again, talking about different kart racing games from across the generations of consoles that I've played, and some of the games that I've never played but I will play for this series. In my opinion, Crash Team Racing for the PS1 was the pinnacle of kart racing throughout the late 90s and even the early 2000s, and that is the standard that I'll be comparing each of the other games to, including its own worthy rival Mario Kart and its own remake, Crash Nitro Fueled. But this short video will just focus on the PS1 classic first of all. The reason CTR was so good is evident in the fact that I can boot it up even now in 2024 and it still controls really well, and the graphics are pretty decent too. Although it's a bit of a spoiler, I really don't care that much about graphics, especially for kart racers. I'll save good graphics for open world RPG kind of games. As long as I can see what's going on, the kart racer is fair game for me. CTR though, for me, was not some revolutionary console-breaking game though. It just did some things that already existed, well, better than other games. And that's not to say it didn't have its own innovation, of course it did. It's just, if you look at it, you can't look at it without looking at other games from that era and comparing it. First of all, it had a very strong roster of memorable characters that had been built up through the 3 platforming games that preceded it, such as the ridiculous Ripperoo, the pulsating Papu Papu. I mean, look at those titties.
Papu Papu's got titties.
No! That's why I call him a fat cunt.
Thank you for
I
that,
noticed that too.
Inspiring. And of course, the newcomer villain for the series, N-Oxide, he was literally a pun brought to life. But each character also had different driving styles. You have turn for beginners, acceleration and balance for intermediate players, speed for advanced players, and Pal Penta for Pal Penta. There is a story to this game, but it's not all that interesting or relevant really. I'm not really that interested in racing game storylines, I just want to play the game. But essentially, in short, N-Oxide invades Earth and forces the Earthlings to race for the defense of their planet. It could really just be a Space Jam movie storyline. Anyway, I'm more interested in the race mechanics, even though I'm not really the best at them. I still find them absolutely mind-blowing and fascinating. There's a great host of varied tracks with creative shortcuts, speed boosts, and memorable themes. I mentioned earlier there were classes for beginners to advanced players. CTR has a great emphasis on skill. Now, before the Mario Kart players call for me to be executed, I'm not saying Mario Kart doesn't require skill. At the high end, Mario Kart requires a lot of skill, but I'm talking about the experience here of the average Joe picking up and playing this game. If you're playing with high-level AI or other humans, if you are the better player, you will win most of the time. I'd go as far as to say 90+% of the time, if you are the better player, you will win, especially if you've mastered the speed class. But even if you handicap yourself to play as a turn character and you play against an average speed player, you're in for a rough time if you are the speed player against an expert turn player. But if you put 2 experienced players together, one is speed, one is turn, speed is going to win 90+% of the time. Items are really fun in this game, but they're nowhere near as powerful or race-breaking as some other racing games, such as Mario Kart's weapons. I mean, the blue shells are infamous for a reason. CTR does have some powerful weapons though, such as the Warp Orb, which when juiced will target every other player in the map and make them spin around a couple of times. And it also has, I think it's called Entropy's Clock, and it slows players right down, which if they happen to be going over a speed boost, over a jump at the time, it can cause them to fall. But those weapons only typically show up if you're in one of the lower positions, like the bottom half of the table for the rankings. And by that time, your rival players who are in first and second are going to be light years ahead of you, so that you're not really going to catch up anyway. And of course, I'm putting AI aside for the moment because AI in Crash Team Racing does have rubber banding. Again, not as extreme as some of the Mario Kart entries, but it is there. Now, it's important to note that I do actually like both Mario Kart and CTR. This isn't really a competition about which one I like more, because I like both of them a lot. Here's where they differ for me. CTR is the game that I play when I want to enjoy the skill and thrill of driving a kart. Mario Kart is the game that I play when I just want to sit down with a bunch of friends and have some mindless fun. Again, this is not about high-level players. High-level players, they will have a different experience on both games. But when I'm just playing as a mid player with my friends, CTR, it's more about how you drive. And when I'm playing Mario Kart, it's more about what items am I going to pull at what point, are the stars going to align, and then the skill focus for me is a little bit lower than it would be for CTR. If both games were played with 0 items, so let's say I played CTR with no items and I played Mario Kart with no items against my friends, the experience would be slightly different, but it would be more about the skill. I think that the thing about Mario Kart that makes it a bit more luck-based than CTR is the items. This is purely anecdotal. I don't have any hard evidence or numbers to back this up. This is just from years of playing CTR and years of playing Mario Kart. With CTR, its most powerful weapon, as I mentioned earlier, the Warp Orb and the Entropy Clock. Because you only get those items when you're really far behind, you need to then spend time to catch up. That's part one. The second thing is that those items of the clock and the warp orb, they affect every single player in front of you. This means that if you are in first place and you get hit by the clock or the warp orb, guess what? All the other players between you and the player that activated it also get hit with the warp orb and the clock. So it doesn't really affect first and second place as much as it affects the person who activated the item and the few positions directly ahead of them. Whereas Mario Kart, we've all had the experience where the blue shell is coming and you're about to win a race, it hits like 100 meters before the finish line and you just see kart after kart zoom past you and into first, second, and then it was not uncommon for me, for example, to be first for all 3 laps on 150cc with AI or online with friends for just a ill-timed blue shell to hit me, and I actually once fell down to like 6th place from first because of that one blue shell. The third thing is that the warp orb is actually much rarer than the blue shell. It was quite common for me to experience a race where I didn't see a single clock or warp orb used in a 3-lap race, whereas in Mario Kart it's a lot more frequent and it's not uncommon to be hit by a blue shell more than once. So what I'm really trying to say is that they are both some of the best kart racing games, but for different reasons. There are 2 main reasons why I think this game has a bigger emphasis on skill than a lot of kart racers of its time. Number 1, mastery of shortcuts. Now, shortcuts are in almost every kart racing game. That's not special. But the shortcuts that I'm going to talk about are. So the first thing that a player can do when they want to get really good at CTR is master the shortcuts. And I'm not just talking about the clear and obvious shortcuts that are there, or even the semi-hidden ones, such as in Sewer Speedway or Tiger Temple, where you can throw the bomb to open the tiger's mouth. I'm talking about the shortcuts players have made for themselves from being really fast, smart, and creative. But a lot of those shortcuts can't be mastered until a player understands the second major thing, boosting and reserves. CTR, of course, wasn't the first game to introduce drift boosting, but in my opinion, it perfected it. I think it is the best skill-focused drifting system from its time. Drift boosting gives you a short boost of speed that increases the more you chain them together up to a maximum of 3 in a row. But not only that, there's a hidden reserve meter that was conveniently implemented by online CTR that goes up the more you boost, jump boost, and hit turbo pads, and then will gradually decrease if you do none of those things for an extended period of time. For high-level players, it is constantly a battle to maintain high reserves to maintain that top speed and to get the best boosts from turbo pads. That is a very simplified and watered-down explanation, but there are plenty of videos that analyze the data in depth for you to look at, should you wish. But to summarize, it's those 2 key aspects that really make CTR the best kart racer of its time, in my opinion, and even still one of the best kart racers to this day. While it may be the best, however, it doesn't hold a candle in popularity to Mario Kart. And when I get round to reviewing those games, I'll give you more thought as to why I think that is. The next video will be Rafa Cortex Wolverine 2, so for those of you who have been waiting for that, stay tuned for that. But the next video in this series will be regarding the remaster of CTR, and then we will work our way through intervals of other Crash racing games, Mario games, but also I would like to talk about some lesser known games to make a full-on power ranking of the best kart racers of all time. And I want to experience them all so that I'm not biased in any way. I'm really playing the games and just deciding as I play which ones I think are the best.